Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl. I'm a recovery coach here at Capital Recovery Center. This is our coffee and conversation for the day. And the article I have here is by medicalnewstoday.com. And the article I have is Trauma Types, Causes, Symptoms, and Recovery. It says such a psychological trauma is a response to an event that a person finds highly stressful. Such an experience is a war zone, a natural disaster, or an accident. Trauma can cause a wide range of physical and emotional symptoms. Not everyone who experiences a stressful event will develop trauma. There are also various types of trauma. Some people will develop symptoms that resolve after a few weeks, while others will experience long-term effects. With treatment, people can address the root cause of trauma and find constructive ways to manage their symptoms. When I picked this article, I was thinking of my past experience. Some things when we experience trauma, so when some of these symptoms might not come right away after we experience these types of traumas. Sometimes we can go through life weeks and months and years and not getting to it talks about the root cause. Then when we start working on ourselves, we can see where the trauma affected us and it's why we act the way we do sometimes. So like sometimes you don't see the symptoms right away. It's the longer effects that get to us, and then we have to address the root and figure out how to manage our feelings and emotions and our trauma experiences. We have to really dive deep and take care of that to just better our mental state, our physical, and our spiritual. So it says types of trauma. According to the American Psychological Association, APA, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event such as an accident or a natural disaster. People may experience trauma as a response to any event they find physical or emotional, threatening, or harmful. Trauma can cause a range of emotions both immediately after the event and in a long term. People may feel overwhelmed, helpless, or shocked, and may have difficulty processing their experiences. Trauma can also cause physical symptoms. Symptoms that persist and do not become less severe can indicate that the trauma has developed into a mental health condition called post-traumatic stress disorder, as PTSD. There are three main types of trauma. This is acute trauma. This results from a single stressful or dangerous event. Chronic trauma. This results from repeated and prolonged exposure to highly stressful events. Examples include cares of a child abuse, bullying, or domestic violence. Complex trauma. This results from exposure to multiple traumatic events. This is like some types of trauma can happen one time and we can develop symptoms that way. But like some of the traumas, like multiple episodes, right, can really put a damper on our mental state. And so we have to like really analyze that. And there, it talks about like a wide range of events and traumatic things, because what affects you might not affect me the same way, right? So I have to be mindful of that to try to help somebody out, through that traumatic event, because we all experience things and we all deal with them a different way too. So I have to be mindful. I think we all have to be mindful that some people deal with things differently. It doesn't make them any less than or more than. We just have to be there to support them through their journey. So secondary trauma or vicarious trauma is another type of may occur. In this case, a person develops trauma symptoms due to close contact with someone who has experienced a traumatic event. This is a good one here. It says family members, mental health professionals, and others who care for someone who has experienced a traumatic event may be at risk of vicarious trauma. The symptoms may be similar to those of PTSD. So it seems like they're saying like not just the person that suffers from trauma or a trauma event, but the family members and the people closest to them also can suffer from that. I didn't think about that until my coworker, my friend, told me like, give you an example, like me, overdosing, or me going through something traumatic, right? And my family members, my friends see that, also can put them into a traumatic event, So like I had to be mindful of that. I didn't think about that until like recently, like I caused a lot of traumatic events in my family and friends' life, and not just I suffer, they also suffer too. It says emotional and psychological responses. A person who has been through trauma may experience denial, anger, fear, sadness, shame, confusion, anxiety, depression, numbness, guilt, hopelessness, irritability, difficulty concentrating. They may have emotional outbursts, find it difficult to regulate their emotions, or withdraw from people. People may also experience flashbacks during which they relive the traumatic event in their mind or nightmares. And that's got to be tough. People reliving these situations and having flashbacks and night terrors and stuff like that. Because trauma is serious. It really, and it can be just my opinion. Like when we deal with trauma, we can experience and have flashbacks and deal with things um, in a short period of time, right? And do I know that like these emotions and feelings and these events just go away? I don't think so, right? But I think we do get better if we get to the root cause and deal with them, because if we have trauma, we cannot just not address it, just like anything else. Um, so there's things and ways to deal with trauma, and we it can be anything. It can be counseling, therapy, medications. Just there's things that we have to do just like in recovery from a drug and alcohol addiction, right? We also have to address the trauma aspect of it because I've learned too, like I'm trying to, my aim is long lasting sobriety, right? And that's just not just focusing on the symptoms of drugs and alcohol, right? I have to focus on the core, right? The trauma, um, all the emotions and feelings that come with it, stuff like that we have to address and really work on, dive deep so we can live a full life. Place here, let's see, physical responses along with the emotional reaction. Trauma can cause physical symptoms such as headaches, digestive symptoms, fatigue, racing heart, sweating, jumpiness. People may go on to develop other mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, substance misuse problems. Yep. So some of the reasons why I think some other reasons why is we deal with trauma and emotion in our emotions and stuff like that is through substance misuse. That's like one of the big factors. Um, so like we have to deal with them. Mental health and trauma and drug addiction goes hand in hand, right? So we have to address all factors. We can't just focus, put our energy into one thing, because eventually, I think, if we focus on just the drug and alcohol addiction, um, eventually the trauma and stuff like that will overweigh that, and then eventually we can go back to relapsing or other events that we experience by experiencing trauma. Let's see, it says traumatic experiences. So according to the World Health Organization research from 2017, about 70% of people worldwide may experience a traumatic event at some point in life. Yeah, I agree with that because listen, um, nobody's subjected from trauma, right? I think we all experience some type of traumatic event or some trauma happening in our lives. Like I said earlier, like it can impact me different than you, right? So we all got to be mindful of other people's past experience with traumas and stuff like that. It says bull, bullying, harassment, physical, psychological, or sexual abuse, sexual assault, traffic collisions, childbirth, life-threatening health conditions, the sudden loss of a loved one, an attack, a kidnapping, acts of terrorism, natural disasters, and war. A traumatic event may be isolated, or a person may experience repeated ongoing traumatic events. A person can also experience trauma after witnessing something traumatic that happens to someone else. Wow, that's big. And I think that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, if I'm going through something, I experience something traumatic, and my family member witnesses that, or a friend witnesses that, or an innocent bystander, right? That can be traumatizing to them, and like I didn't think of it like that. I was locked and loaded in selfishness and self-centeredness, right? It was always about me and how I was affected, right? I didn't think of others, of the way they are affected by my actions and the things I put myself through. Yes, it's witnessing somebody going through something. Somebody on a, like, think about it. Somebody just walking down the street and a real bad car accident happens and somebody gets killed, right? That person can be experiencing, that's a big traumatic event in our lives, to see and witnessing something like that. It doesn't always have to happen to them, right? To experience some of these symptoms, um, which is, we have to be mindful and to address uh, whatever's going on with us, because today is today, and like we can be okay, but then something happens, and our lives can change it, in a second. And but there is help. There is help for our mental and physical and spiritual well-being. So we have to be mindful to address the trauma that we experience. Let's see here. It says PTSD. So PTSD develops when the symptoms of trauma persist or worsen for at least a month. PTSD is distressing and can interfere with a person's daily life and relationships. Symptoms include severe anxiety, flashbacks, and persistent memories of the event. People will also show avoidance behaviors such as trying to avoid thinking about the traumatic event, avoiding place where it occurred, and avoiding its triggers. PTSD may last for years, although treatment can help people manage their symptoms and improve their quality of life. It says previous trauma, physical pain or injury, lack of support after the trauma, other stressors that occur at the same time, such as a financial difficulty, previous anxiety or depression. And that's got to be tough, right? So think about it. If we experience traumatic events and we have some type of trauma and we're experiencing some kind of PTSD, right? And then we have other burdens piling on top of that. That's hard. And it talks about like financial difficulty, or there's a wide range of things, anxiety, depression, our family and friends are going through something, but why we experience these traumatic symptoms, and we're just piling stuff on top of that, the day-to-day stuff can be overwhelming, it can be tough. But it says we can, find ways to manage our symptoms and manage our emotions and feelings. And here's one of them: childhood trauma. So according to the Centers for the Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, toxic prolonged stress from childhood traumatic events may negatively affect the following: brain development, stress response systems, the immune system, decision making, and learning. As a result, trauma, especially ongoing trauma, can significantly affect a child's long-term emotional development, mental health, physical health, and behavior. Yeah, I agree. When kids um, at a young age develop some type of trauma, it can really mess with their mental state. And I think that can carry on to adulthood, if it's not addressed properly. And sometimes we can do all the therapy and counseling and some type of medication sometimes is needed. Um, that stuff just doesn't go away. It's just how to better to cope and to manage our emotions and feelings so they don't worsen, right? I think things just don't, disappear, right? But we can also manage them in a healthier way than just going to substance misuse or acting out uh, on to others, and how do we treat ourselves and how do we treat the people around us, um, because that affects all that. Trauma can affect all areas of our lives, so we have to address it in a proper way. Says treatments for trauma. Several treatments can help people who are experiencing trauma or PTSD cope with their symptoms and improve their quality of life. Doctors will select a treatment that best suits a person's situation. Yeah, everybody's different. Medications may help a person manage symptoms such as anxiety, depression, and sleep disturbance. Doctors may suggest selective serotonin, I don't know that word, such as some of the SSRIs, like Zoloft and Paxil and stuff like that. Some medications we talked about it might be needed. Therapy is a preferred treatment for trauma. People can work with a therapist or has experience handling trauma. Beneficial types of therapy may include. So yeah, everybody's different. Everybody experiences different traumas. Like I said earlier, they affect people uh, differently. So we have to, I think, get with a professional, right? Get with doctors, get with a clinical team that will help you and guide you through your trauma experiences. And like it says, it might be therapy, counseling, medication. There's a wide range of things that we can, manage our emotions and feelings, and it's needed. We can't let this just fester and not treat what's really going on with us, because it's going to end up in a bad way, right? So self-care after trauma. Practicing self-care can help people cope with emotional, psychological, and physical symptoms of trauma. Examples of self-care for trauma include exercise. It says 2019 review suggests that exercise may be effective therapy for people with PTSD. Mindfulness. Studies suggest that mindfulness strategies may help reduce the negative effects of trauma. So it says social connection. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs suggests that social support is one of the most effective methods to protect against PTSD. Wow. Yeah. So we need people in our lives to support us, right? We need connection. Because I know for me, like trauma or substance misuse can be isolating, right? We can avoid people, places, and things. So we need like-minded people. We need that support. We need help. We need people we can rely on. It says sleep. Traumatic experiences may contribute to sleep difficulties. Most adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. So a person may benefit from speaking with a doctor about how to improve their sleep. Yeah, sleep is a big one, and I think we all need it. So it definitely we need to work on things so we can have better sleep, and we can have a better can affect our appetite. So trauma and substance misuse can affect the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. So if we can address that by through counseling and therapy and medications and stuff like that, and social support, and social networking and stuff like that. We have a better chance of having a full life. The last part here says when to seek help. People who experience persistent or severe symptoms of trauma should seek help from a mental health professional. It is especially important to seek help if the trauma symptoms interfere with a person's daily functioning or relationships with others. Even though with mild symptoms can feel better once they talk with someone. Yes. So it says get with a mental health professional. So that's where the recovery process will begin and to start. Because I know for me, like if I try to do things on myself, on my own, which I tried to do before, and it ended me in a lot more trouble and a lot more bad situations, right? I just caused more harm to myself and my family and friends when I tried to do things on my own. Until I sought help in, with some professionals, my life started to begin to change, and I started to grow, and I started to heal and deal with my trauma and my substance misuse. Um, I don't recommend anybody to try to do things on their own, right? Because it just doesn't work. It didn't work for me, and I've seen it didn't work for many others. Until I got with some professionals knew what they were doing, and sought the professional help. I started to change. I started to grow. I started to love and care about myself. That's what it's about. It's about loving and caring for yourself, and the ways to do that is to work on yourself and to uh, the core, address the core, what's really going on with us, and to be open and honest. That can be tough, especially when we deal with these type of trauma. To be vulnerable and to trust someone. But it's needed. It's not going to happen overnight. It might take some time. It's definitely a process, but like in the end, it's beneficial. That was our end of our meeting for today. So my name is Carl. I'm a recovery coach here at Capital Recovery Center. Until next time, see you later.